Greetings, technology enthusiasts. I am Chandrahas and I am delighted to be here with you representing CyberBrainer. Do you not believe that the technology sector is advancing at an unprecedented rate, making this an opportune moment to acquire the skills that will facilitate your progress? With CyberBrainer, we are empowering you to take control of your own future. At CyberBrainer, we do not merely impart your interests. We assert that information is power, yet it is the application of knowledge that distinguishes you. Our courses are meant to equip you with essential skills, whether you are pursuing data science, understanding artificial intelligence, or delving into cybersecurity. Let us commence the session and seize the future today. Thank you.
Yes, we have done period schedule. We have done work schedule calendar. We have understood the point time code and time entry code and how it is associated to time code group and some of its constituents, advanced and other stuff, and then default calculation tag. Now the next part is we go to the next important item, which is basically time entry template. If I start with the worker view, worker time eligibility. Kevin John. If I open this worker, he is currently having a in and out time entry template. Let's first understand what this time entry template has offering for this particular worker. If I duplicate it and open the time entry template, it would be on the timesheet. It's time. Entry template is the back-end version of your timesheet, front-end version. Right? You see over here is basically a timesheet which has a totals and everything configured. If the worker doesn't know that he is eligible for this particular time entry template, nobody knows it is because they have nothing to do with the template. They just want the front end. But as a consultant, you should be aware of that. What are the things that these workers have been configured for? Which template they should be eligible for? If you have a global organization, which is basically country by country, every country using time tracking, then my recommendation is to have separate time entry template for each of the country. In the United States, there would be two set of workers, which is basically in and out and hours only. Then for them, you should have separate two time entry templates. Salary done, one is hourly. Salary employees need to log their time. Then you have a time entry template for them. Salary. Employees do not log time based on their in time and out time. It may be that they would have some certain projects where they have to add in and out, but not for all the projects. But hourly workers, the primary work is to add their in and out time. Correct? For them, it is advisable to have a different. Both of them should have a different one to identify and to have no mix match for the configuration break fix. One question here. Means every time entry template can only be this two time entry template in an organization. Just for A, Let us suppose I have a like organization where they have a manufacturing plant only in US but not anything anywhere else. I can only with the two-time entry templates. And right? No, I don't. If you have manufacturing unit, what sort of workers are doing time entry? First, the question lies over there. If all the workers who are hourly are doing time entry template, then you will create one time entry template for them. If there is a provision that you want to track their hours for salaried employed, then you should have another template for them. Max, we can do like two time entry templates, or I think it depends on the requirement to requirement. There is no hard search provision for that. I'm just thinking about the other scenarios where we can make this time entry. Prove me a scenario. No, I'm just thinking like which can be a scenario where we can use this time entry template. Like first is time entry template is mandatory. Correct, it is mandatory. That is mandatory. But my recommendation was to have separate time entry template for each of the country that you have for a consultant. It's a ease of configuring portal and not a hodgepodge. Because the eligibility will create in the time entry. We will go there, we are not rushing out. We will go there. Basically, the first thing is the name. I have a distinguished name for every of your in and out workers or whatsoever. Distinguished name. Then it comes to default. First thing is which is a mandatory field, just default time entry code. If you are having a population which is basically a workers who are based out of California, and they are in and out workers like hourly workers, what should be the default time entry code? When I say about default time entry code, the moment I click on the screen, automatically a time code pops up. Correct? It's default. You have mentioned over here, if I don't mention over here, if I mention your 1BH regular next time, if I close it, I click over here. BH regular comes into the picture. You need to configure one default time entry code, that is for sure. Now let me just Now there is another item which is not mandatory, but you can have a overtime request code. With the new functionality of overtime request code is basically you request code overtime for future data. For example, future data, or you request a different overtime code to work manager. One thing is that your overtimes can get configured automatically with the provision of that if you cross 9 hours or whatsoever. But there would be some scenarios that you are not eligible to work, like for example, you are not. You stated your manager that day, Wednesday is not my shift, but I request to do overtime on that day. Automatically, I request you manager, and you had a communication, and your manager said that do one thing, you request overtime to me. Directly request overtime. For directly requesting your overtime on a specific day, which is not your whole working day, or even if you are working on a day where your regular hours ends and you say that I will be working on Wednesday after my working hours of 5 hours. Your manager said that you request overtime on that day. There can be a different number of scenarios. Overtime code. Request code is a code which is basically a worker asks a manager to have an overtime day. Workday gave a provision that you request a separate overtime and a business process would create a trigger, which is basically an overtime request. When they said that you are requesting an overtime, hard-coded overtime, I would say, then you can do what you have to add this into the template also. They said let's add it into the template. When you see overtime, there should be overtime. Right here. It would be shown over once again. Do you see anything about my team's overtime request? Here, we can request one overtime over here worker, for example. A manager can also request or as well can create a request for the worker on behalf of the worker and worker can also request for the manager. For example, I take this employee. I stated that I will do overtime on like 28 2 hours. 3 hours, let's take. And then submit. It's passed it. One more thing. The request overtime cannot be done past it once the date is crossed. It's always a present and a future date. Just one question in that. In Chronos, we have a like functionality called historical edits. Like in the past also, you can do the Workday. You have the provision to edit your historical based on the period schedule you add. What is the sequence? If the period schedule is open, it's all connected with the period schedule. It should be open. We'll open that period schedule and no for overtime request, it will not make the justice. Workday doesn't get the provision to do. For overtime request, you can do micro edits, your time entries, but requests are always made on not past dated. It's always on a future dated. The request in this sense, if we need to do any update, we can do through micro edits. Micro edits and everything. Overtime request is one of the items. You don't want to put anything, it's fine. The Workday doesn't have any issues on that. It's not a mandatory field, it's just a configure. It's not common in all the companies. It depends on industry to industry, which kind of industry you have, and if they are operating such model of having a future date over time. Like in India, there are industries where the workers who are going to the factory, they have the provision to us that I'll be doing overtime on that date to get some extra money. Yes, extra feature they have just added. Enable Workday scheduling. Workday scheduling is basically a labor management tool. In order to use that in Workday time tracking, first thing is that your Workday labor management SQ should be enabled. It's a different module. Labor management optimization is basically a worker management tool. When two workers is working, what area of worker working? All sort of shift configuration for the worker. It's a different SQ of worker. Workday labor optimization, it's a very big SQ. It's kind of advanced scheduling. Advanced scheduling for the worker. They call it labor optimization. It is basically flexible work arrangements, worker shift tracking, all those things. On an advanced version, if that has been enabled in your system, then it would be. I am not a worker and that certification is also done like Workday. Is it new? It's like not a very old kind of SQ. It's a new SQ. Like it's been in the system for like 3-4 years back. But for like the industries that I have been working, I have not used it. Popular case can be a customer service company. There's a customer service department and they want Workday to be used for them. Factory. Alright, all the labor factories, heavy worker. Walmart would be one of the subscriber of this. Reliance Smart Fresh or Reliance Fresh, where there is a worker optimization, where there is a heavy load of shifting and managing flexible work arrangements. Now, when you see this particular item, it looks very fancy and it's now the game starts from the first section of this time entry. Those workers who are eligible for the time entry. Let me go back. For example, this is the one which we created. Now first section, when you see over here in and out option, in and out option is basically what options you want to give for in and out worker in time entry code. You configure the time entry code how a worker can enter a time either hours only or in and out. Correct. Now here you give the provision to the worker that how he would be going out when he's clocking out. What sort of reasons that he can make to clock out? There are several kind of reasons that the worker can clock out, like for example, you came in at 10 and you're clocking out at 12. Either you can directly go out or your work is done, you out, or you are taking a break or you're taking a meal. For example, if I take a break, I click. Your call center is mandatory. That oh, we did that last time. Click. What will happen automatically? The DH in out would create with the label break. And again I'll click after like in and out. For 30 and out reason will be meal. This reason will last long. The reason will ask on specific time entry code. Like this time type, we have by regular. In and out entry option. But whenever we are using this time type in and out, then only we are going to get this result. 3 women 17. And I click. Now what will happen? Automatically see I didn't break. A break block generated. Then after that I came in, I took a meal, came back. And now I'm completely out. My working hours is 6.5. Now there are different options. This is a different default pattern also in and out. If I don't want to include a meal in my job, I'll click. Let me refresh it. It has a press. Now I don't want meal allowable types of out. This is allowable. Types means what are the things you are enabling for the worker. I just want out and meal. The break could be removed. I can have now in and out 3 pairs in and out, 2 pairs in and out, 1 pair. Default in and out pattern. What do you want to configure for the workers? Or in meal, there can be different like patterns. But it is not hard coded that you have to do in the same way for the worker. It can be a default we like in break, then in meal, then in break and in out. What a worker can take. For the in and out of the time entry code, whatever it is configured. These are the patterns. It's up to you what you want to configure. It's not mandatory from the company wise also. It's from the consultant standpoint. The thing that you would need to ask, like from the counterpart, that do you want out time as meal or break? You want only in and then final out. These are the 3 things that a consultant would ask to the business. Default in and out pattern, nobody gives a care. It's up to the consultant how he wants to configure it. We just have a question here. If we configure out and meal and consultant is going 2 times out. Kind of a break you can. Then also it will show as a meal. Second time also it will show as a meal, or let's show it as a break. Break it down. When you select over here, I configure over here. It's going on a break. Second, I have to move one of the items. If I start over here as 10 at 14, I am taking a break. What are the out reasons that I will get? Either meal out. It's up to the consultant who is entering the time he wants to make it out. And then again I enter time after coming in. As out, it's up to the worker. This is the option. Question. I got. It has to be selected by that worker, right? Meal or out. This is good action. Makes sense. I got it actually. 1 second. and now the second thing. The part of things that are very small that but is an effective over here is basically the for these areas. Track in and out. Down to the second. Down to the second means like the macro seconds, like 10 of if it is a mobile check-in, check-out. In the United States, you have check-in, check-out through mobile or through bunching machine or whatever it is. 10 point, for example, 10:15. 10, 15.3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 7. How many decimal number seconds to the decimal number 6? It will track if you want, if you enable this. If you don't, then it will automatically take 10:15 as 10:15, not goes to the seconds. Enable optional out type. For example, if let's see how it looks like. If I click, when I click over here, previously there used to be stress over here. Now it is not like, for example, you added 10, you clicked. And this goes Sentinel to remove. Better is doing more. You see there is an optional out time. If I click, what will happen? Incomplete time block. It will create. It will when you go and review and submit. We will show you a lot. That all other time blocks have been completed. But there is one time entry on this particular day which is not completed. You need to, this block is not considered as complete block. You need to add your out time also. You click. Automatically, your block is created and you can submit. Optional point is also given. When I say that enable optional point time, there is another provision that prevents submission of incomplete time block. If you click, then when the worker is submitting the time and the block is incomplete, it will not allow you to submit. It will give you a warning that please submit that time block. Please submit that complete that time entry. This area is done. Look, this area. This part is done. Now this area. Time clock, matching event. Time clock. Matching event is basically when you do your time entries through clock in, clock out. Or when I say clock in, clock out is a method, which is basically punching method. You clock in and when your shift's over, you clock out. Have you seen machines where people used to? There would be a green light coming up. No, I've seen Chronos machine. No, I've seen Chronos machine. Chronos has their machine. Now Workday doesn't have their machine. In Workday, third-party machines get integrated, then see when this thing happens. Then there is an important thing, you should have a time calculation hub enabled. Because there would be import blocks would happen, correct, right? import would be done from their integration. Clock in, clock out from that. There are some provision that we need to do in the time clock matching event. First thing, match time blocks. First thing is the maximum time block solution. How much a time block can be the maximum? For example, you checked in an UR and you forgot to check out, and the next morning you coming and checking it. More than 24 hours has happened. Yes, right? The system would take it as checked out, correct? First thing, the validation needs to be done over here, like the maximum would be 24. Like for example, today I checked in at 9. Next day, I'm coming at 11. I forgot to check out at 6 and coming back at 11 and then checking it. Then it would be, the system would give me an error. My Workday would give me an error. In the checking part, it will check in from third-party tool or whatever, but the Workday system. It will show me incomplete blocks at 2 of the regions today and tomorrow. Then manually I have to make the out time as 6 p.m. for that very day and until for today 11 am. Are you getting my point? No, it's like a little bit confused. It won't allow you just check in if you do next day. Third party tool. How, tell me one thing that's a third party machine. How will? It will not allow in Workday. It would get error out in the timesheet. I would have this timesheet also for me. Correct? For in and out workers. Here the way you saw incomplete time block. Block would generate incomplete time block. Correct? Whatever entries which are doing through third party tool, eventually it would be shown over this area. Correct? Yes, it will show because that is time tracking in Workday. Integrations would run and this would be displayed over here only. In the time machine time tracking, when we enter, how it will know, like it will. It will go with it with that particular time entry code. In that needs to be configured. That's it. We got to integration. And that is not your headache. Your headache is to configure the codes over here. Rest is integration in that area. Prevent matching of consecutive check-ins. Consecutive check-ins is basically, for example, sometimes what happens, system glitch or whatever happened. You checked in 10 am, you felt that it is not checking in, and you again check in. It is again 10 am. It would prevent you to check in if you click it. Warn workers to have consecutive check-ins. Warning message would be given. This area is like this. If you want to see a clock in, clock out, how it works for a worker over here. If I go to the worker page, it works very good with Workday Mobile also. Not only Workday integrations, but Workday Mobile also. If I go and see the menu, this machine details, we have to get somewhere in the Workday. Forget machine, forget machine. You will get confused. Don't think about that. There is another method is check in, check out and Workday entry. Check in, check out can be done through Workday Mobile also. If you see over here the integration part, don't think much integration is with Workday and with the third party tool, your Workday integration team and you. Your job is to create time entry code that would be added to that machine. Don't mix your chromos with Workday. That's my primary suggestion. When you see a Workday time over here, there's some way this is. You should know about this worklet. Worklet is basically application. Worker can enter the time from here also. When you see over here, here also you get time clock. If you check in, it will ask you time entry code. For example, project time. Check. If I go to the time entry, enter time for the worker. Enter my time. I will see unmatched check-in. A block could generate. A block could generate. See. Again, I go to my time menu. I checked out. It asked me what you're doing. Break, kneel or out. I said out. View my calendar. Again, I unmatched check-in because why it has created unmatched check-in? Can you answer me? Match check. 2 times. I just taught you. That one, right, the 24 time block. No 24 time block. It's basically, we have not prevented matching consecutive check-ins. It's the same time, correct. We are not doing it. There is a provision. When you create a time entry, time tracking is inevitable. You have Workday Mobile also. It is not that it is with third party. Check-in, check-out is not meant to be only for third party tool. It is also can be used for Workday Mobile. Worker needs to go to the time menu and there they have the check-in, check-out option. What will happen? They need not to go and they need not know to go and do micro edits. They can simply click in, click out. This is an option for that. Well, this area is done. Now let's go to time of calculation. This is a new feature which has worked as given, which is basically your time off. Calculations can be also added over your timesheet. But for that there is a mandatory field for example, if there is a time off. Let's view. Time off. It goes to absence. But let me just give you any time off. For example, any of the. If I check about the holidays, when your timesheet, for example, timesheet, where is that worker? This worker we are testing. But when we go to this worker, and in this worker we go to time and absence. Enter time. If we want to use absence in time tracking, there is options in absence in your time off is to configure. An entry option for time off, either it goes to directly to time off calendar or to time tracking only or enter through either time tracking or time off. What it enables over here is basically it will allow here provision of absences to be entered. Alright. There are options. It comes in absence also. It is an absence. It's not a part of time tracking. It's an absence option. When we do that, If we click this particular box, then what will allow all the time of calculations, for example, I give you example, a very simple example. You're working today, you're working 5 hours. Sorry, you're working 8 hours a day. After half day, you felt that I'm feeling sick. I need to go home. 4 hours you spent in office and you went home afterwards. 4 hours you added sick time. Total working day hours would be 8. Correct. Sick time is paid. Correct. But in the 90-day manager said that this project is not done. You need to just work on that. Just to spend some time. You spent time 2 hours and added regular hours in your time sheet. This is a hypothetical example. What do you think about the total number of hours? It would be somewhere around 10. Correct. In your company, it is a law that if you are spending more than 8 hours a day, then you are eligible for overtime. Correct? Hence, you should get 2 hours overtime. Correct. 4 hours your regular time. 4 hours your sick time. Plus 2 hours extra is of paid. 4 hours. Your sick time would be also considered as your paid hours. Correct? Correct. Then if your company has this provision, that you are allowed to have overtime. This is a hypothetical example that I can think of right now. That particular scenario, if this is enabled over here and your time calculations are configured, then you will see some of the values over here. Overtime, double time on the futons. 1 second, let me refresh it once again. There are n number of scenarios depending on company to company scenarios. If you are not eligible, you are not eligible. You should be eligible. It depends on what is the eligibility criteria. 1 second. This calculated time of when we select and then you say eligible criteria will be there. Where we can see the eligibility criteria. What eligibility criteria? You told like if they have this, you will configure your time of calculations, brother. In the absent, you will count your eligibility criteria and after time tracking, there you will come. You will get your policies that in my provision software engineers are allowed to do overtime or labors are not allowed to, and then calculations would be created. Then in calculations we'll create an eligibility criteria that what populations is there, and then you will create criterias for that. Time entry template is your display machine. It's not there. System needs and breaks. If your break is enabled over here, you will see few options over here. Create time block for breaks. Create time blocks for meal. What will happen when you're selecting meal and break automatically? A block was getting generated. If I enable this, your breaks are enabled, and if I click over here, it will get generated. It's a good question when you're having a consultation for example, in California meal penalty and break penalty. If they are going for break and want to show it on your timesheet. If this is enabled, then it would. When the worker is selecting me, it will automatically show over here. That is all about time, block breaks and event. I don't spend much time over here, like well-known fact that if it is checked, it will show, it will not check. It will not show. Now, most importantly, there is one important factor that I wanted to state. U is basically, when we were doing this, you see the work tags. The additional information tags the details. I stated that it needs to be configured on the, even if it is configured over here. You need to have it configured over the work tag section over here. On the time entry template section, whatever you configured over there, you have to just replicate over here also. Now, and if I remove it from here, what it's saying? Something. If I didn't add and then it will not show, then it will not show that. Simple as that. I'm just removing, it was showing. Click. And I go back to my time. Entry code, I refresh it. See now any details are coming up. I don't see anything. It's not coming. If I want to add a work tag, if it is associated with any of my template, even if it is not associated with any of my template code, this has a power of overriding. For example, this cost center and it just add to now if I want to hide it from the self-service. Self-service is basically who? Employer self-service. The employee can't see that. If any external workers can be requested. For example, HR partner managers who are doing that. Then they can see. You can have primary work tags as 10, but you can also have additional work tag. When I say about additional work tags, Workday has 12 custom. You can have maximum 12 custom work tags. Now work tags is what? Work tags is basically additional information tag. Some same as custom object if you have heard about this word. Custom object is basically used in HCM widely. It's a part of also Workday HCM suite. Creating your own object and filling data into it. In Workday time tracking, you can have multiple work tags depending on your requirement to requirement. Most of the requirements can be filled with the Workday given work tags. For example, if you see waived mail or break, it is a custom one, which has been labeled over here. When you create a work tag, it needs to have a security also to a security domain. That is also needs to be added. Work tags are like additional information. For example, in California, mail penalty if a waiver is done or break is taken you need to make. It depends on how a consultant thinks, if he wants to have a button over there or if he wants to have a waived meal or these things over there. It depends on the customer, on the worker thinking, the person who is configuring this particular system. It was shiny. Now there is another part which is basically time entry restrictions. Now you are, after submitting it, why this has been introduced and introduced to have an accountability from the employee. For example, require comments on time entry changes. If you do it, if you have entered, for example, 8 hours and you modified it, make it 10 hours. Then and you submitted, and if it is not, a governance has not been introduced, then you will be modifying and your utilization would increase. Correct? If you're on 100% FT, it will show like you're on 20. You've been burning yourself. That's why this has been introduced. There's another part over here, required comments for change older than up to how many days. Like if it is a recent thing, like 1 day, 2 day, if it is past data about like 8 days, then automatically. Up to 3, we can just up to 3 days. Up to 3 days. But if you don't mention it now, what will happen? Every time we change, it will come. This is one of the again a restrictive person required check in before schedule start time. When I say schedule start time, how the system would understand that it is a schedule to start time. Because this is the worst schedule calendar, right? To work schedule calendar. To work schedule calendar, there is a section when you configure start time and enter. From there, there's another option to see workers schedule also. How it is going to work schedule? We are not giving any information here, right? And the time entry template. Time entry. It's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question. What is time entry template? It's just a UI, correct? But everything is connected, correct? This is the very unique question that you have asked. But it is associated to the worker, correct? System knows when it is a scheduled day and scheduled day out and date. Then there could be another question that how system would know that these many time entry codes are available for the worker. Correct. On the time entry template, it's an internal connection. You don't connect with your schedules or something. If I click on the view worker schedule, automatically a schedule will come up. But there are many schedule calendars. One worker has one work schedule calendar. Internally, they are connected with each other when you do worker time eligibility. It's an internal, and because when it's a time tracking suite, it's a time tracking suite, correct? Everything is connected with each other. Even if in this particular eligibility, if there are workers who are added to different work schedule calendar, they can be workers who are not like, it's depend on your eligibility. There can be workers who are, for example, all software engineers in California, Colorado and Denver are using in and out. There should be like work schedule. Calendar for California is different. Work schedule calendar for Colorado is different and work schedule calendar for Denver is different. California is 10 to 5, Colorado is 5 to 7, Denver is WAM to 10 am. And in your entry template, you make that all the workers of these eligible for this time. Entry template. And this. Is there any different provision in Chronos? For what? For this UIU? But we have to configure everything there. A lot of building blocks are there next. That is what I stated. That is what I stated. Forget Chrono. When I did my training, PeopleSoft folks were there and they failed. I know that. I know this statement also. PeopleSoft folks were there. PeopleSoft Oracle Fusion. No, don't mix things. Never mix things. Because technology will come. But you relate things, that's some similar things, some different things. That's good because actually why I'm relating things here, because we are going to migrate from Chronos to. Then this is one of the interesting thing that you could have. This is quite internally connected. This is only these items took 1 hour. See, after that we have few more things. When we do totals, totals would be accommodated with your time calculations. Time shift, it is not relatable to for us at the moment. Projects we are not doing. Projects is basically connected with, do your company do work their financials? Project is also connected with service companies also, who are working on multiple clients and different projects, and they are doing project time entries, and there through billing and everything happens. Attestation. It is not a part of our training. Attestation is basically a meal, breaks and everything. There are different way of working on this. Local settings is basically your geofence of mobile entry. If you're in the campus, if you mentioned your latitude, we'll do these in our next session, but I'm just giving you a glimpse. When you're near to the office location, elongated latitude of your office is mentioned and you're doing a well-timed entry in your location, it will allow you to enter. But if you're not here at the home and you're entering, it will create validation. Just now, this is calendar view. I still did your own statement that you can also have a monthly view. If I click, if I go to Kevin, I just do this over here. I see over here, see month also coming up. Automatically your entire month comes up. If I make it default only 1, but if I make it like this on the calendar, weekly additional enabled calendar as monthly, then what will happen? In the drop down you will see monthly and monthly. Exactly in the drop down you will see the provision of month is also added. Alright, I think you should take a break now. All those things that I've taught till now, please go and revise it. Welcome to the first session of the Workday time tracking. You wanted to learn time tracking or absence? First time tracking actually. Time tracking. Alright, taking into this account. Welcome to the first session of time tracking, and here it is. What do you understand by the term of the time tracking? And what other tools you have ever encountered with respect to time tracking? Time tracking, I worked on a Chronos application, and even in PeopleSoft Time and Labor, I encountered with that to track their time, In PeopleSoft, I also have used PeopleSoft as an end user to enter time. I was doing testing on that time 2013. And then Chronos. I was a BA for that Chronos. Chronos was a very good tool. That's a market leader for the time tracking. I'm happy. A lot of my friends when I was doing Workday they might and got recently certified in time tracking. At that point of time they moved from Chronos to Workday. And that was my idea, and surely it is right now at some given point of time and some of the geographies. Basically, Workday time tracking is similar to what you see in Chronos, but it has its own way of working. Better. Right? Exactly. And very good linkage with the other modules. When you see the manager, when I talk about Workday time tracking, the thing is that the end user experience is very nice. But in order to make the end user experience nice, there are a lot of things which needs to be done based on the requirements and what else coming up in the market. There are a lot of things. In our class, we will study upon from the base part, like what are the important ingredients to make a stable time tracking system. How to enable that. What are the domains that is needed to be enabled? First, we will start with the requirement. Gathering like this has a requirement, what we need to do. What are the things? We will understand about different sort of time calculations. Like my very not very immediate. I can say I'll say, but my ask is here to when you go to the client, how you will gather this requirement. Definitely. Very basically, very initially, also during demo. Looking for that major. How yep. Let me just complete it. We would definitely go to the base and also industry way of working, what are the things that we make sure. Because in stakeholder management, there are different sort of things which comes into the picture. Some people do understand and some do not understand things. With respect to that, that comes with an experience like how you handle things as a consultant. But you have to be technically sound in respect to taking care of those things in the workday. Alright? That keeps on increasing, and I'm sure that every consultant has a unique way of handling stakeholder and stuffs on the market. But on hindsight, if we talk about implementing the things on the workday environment, we also have to be on the top of the toes when somebody asks me if the template is not working or you're not able to enter the time. And there's certain things on the break fix side. We should be on top of our toes. On top of the toes. Exactly. That's why we are coming into the picture of the taskfulness. That's the expectation from the stakeholders. In this particular training, the 10 hours training, what we'll go through first is basically on the base standpoint of view of the training. The base is basically starts with the 3 pillars. Alright. After that comes the major part, which is basically gathering requirements and implementing the things. That would come after the like. After 1 or 2 sessions, we'll start doing that and implementing that in the Workday environment. Alright? If you have done FCM, it is very similar. How good is your experience with FCM? CFCM means I have done the BA part also and done the testing, and I have run the Kynos. Kynos testing tool. Kynos testing tool. How is that experience with Kynos testing tool? I never have used it. My ex-company had. I was also being trained to work on that, but I never used it. I felt it. I felt it. I felt a lot of data spreadsheet data has to be added. Data has to be added and data has to be synced with your system. Let us suppose if that employee there, you need to see that org structure and whether the employee is only or not, active or not, and is manager. With that, you need to fill that data and then just place it in your local machine and run that process. It's not that complicated. It's simple. I don't know. I was not never excited with that doing. Kynos is right next to my house over here. They have their office over here. Kynos is one of the leader in European region. And they have their headquarters in Belfast, Ireland. Are they one of the good leaders in Workday extend platforms? And in European market, they have a good command. Alright, since you have coming from the BA background, correct? You must have a lot of requirement gathering, client facing, and getting those transition into the developer role. Correct? That's what I can do. Not developer, but mainly into the testing. And then this, the testing means like you don't do configurations. Because BA comes, they make VI documents and then share those things. See, like it's a QA/B, a kind of a thing. You can say, we just take the requirement and then put it into Jira. You work as a license between license, you can say, not a configurator. For this training, you are looking for entire configurations too, or you are just looking for the testing purposes. Because my job, no, not for testing purposes, not for testing purposes. With respect to developing also, correct. Alright. And what are the things that is needed to be asked with the client when you have any break fix or whatever it is with respect to break fix as well as new enhancements. Correct. Like see, now my organization is going to migrate from Kronos to this Workday. And I'm the functional person for this, but I'm not going to be the configurator. But good, like if I have the knowledge on that I can say in the meetings. And also I need to gather the requirements that I will give it to the definitely. Got it. I got your ask. And similarly, we will try to use that. I am a hardcore. My lifespan is on the hardcore configuration and developing side. Alright. And I have been on the like taking care of the clients directly since my beginning. Whatever I have, my experience I'll share with you from the implementation standpoint of view. Great. Alright. Whenever this kind of things happens. The first thing is that basically the basic thing is like SKU subscription. Your organization must have subscribed to the SKU time tracking. That's why you're doing the time tracking implementation. In order to do that, screen is working on it. There's a task over here, functional areas. Function areas, and it is one of the interview questions. When I take interviews, I do ask a lot of basic questions. How to enable? Like start from the base. You will ask as well, like how you will enable this functional. No. Question. No. I don't ask like how will you enable. This is something that Workday will do. You buy the SKU, you subscribe to the SKU, and then, but in the tenant, you will definitely see that this has been enabled over here. What I do ask is basically, what is the job of time calculation and time calculation tracking hub in my interviews? That everybody can say SKU is bought and everything is done like that. One sec. My questions comes on the picture of, I want to hide this. This is what you want to hide. The bar that comes on. What I do ask is basically, what is the role of time calculation functional area and time tracking hub functional area? Now, when you see this screen, you see over here, there are three solutions. Workday time tracking. Time tracking has been divided into two parts. One is a functional area which is basically time tracking. And there are two other parts of it, which is basically time tracking calculations and time tracking hub. What is the role of time tracking calculations and time tracking hub? That come. The basic questions that I do ask. Time calculate tracking is basically the entire experience of time tracking where you have several domains. You understand domains correct. I know that. Sort of. There are a lot of securities. There are a lot of a gateway to explore things in time tracking. But what is the role of time tracking, calculations and time tracking hub? That too is one of the vital parts. And time calculation is a part of time tracking which is essential to run the behind the scene calculation which is not directly been showcased but behind the scene calculation. Now when I talk about behind the scene calculations, basically how the inside calculations run, such as example double time, overtime, shift differential, other stuff. In order to do that, we need to have this SKU enabled. Set up time calculations. And this domain needs to be enabled. You mean to say this? This SKU, you mean to say time tracking calculation, is one of the SKU which needs to be enabled to calculate the time. And it will work behind it. Whenever it will, because calculations run behind it. What you do, like what you enter automatically, the calculations, like for example, you have entered 9 hours. Your company says that after 8 hours, any given hour that you have entered should be considered as overtime. Right? You will not manually calculate now that 1 hour is overtime. The system should automatically calculate and identify based on the configuration that it's overtime. That behind the scene thing is run by time tracking, calculation, SKU or the functional solution. I have one question. As soon as employee enters the time and he hits the enter or save, because of this enablement of time tracking calculation, it will behind the scene, it will calculate and it will show the overtime hours of the sample. On hindsight. Or do we need to run any process for that? No, on a hindsight, it is correct. No, on a hindsight, it is correct. On a hindsight, it is correct. But you need to configure that calculation. The parameter you need to configure. Correct? Right? This is the gateway. If this door is closed, then no calculation would run. This is the gateway. Once the gateway is done, there are a lot of things which needs to be configured. But this door is. If this door is locked, nothing will happen. and also enabling it and giving the right securities in this particular domain. When I take about security, basically this domain has the administrator securities. When you have time tracking enabled, you will definitely have an implementer access or time tracking administrator access. Generally, these two security groups comes into the picture when you enable and you have to give here the access. When I open this in a new tab, we'll see. This domain needs to be enabled. Once you show me this, and then can you just tell me about the time tracking, that functional area? What exactly is that? Time tracking function is basic time tracking functional area, what I stated. Time tracking implementer and time tracking administrator. They have the access to make the entire course. Time tracking function. Time tracking is SQ, is the global SQ which has all the things configuring the UI, the templates, the experience. And it has several, I would say several domains included, which would be 60 domains. I don't know what are the 60 domains where we have to give access, but this is the base part of SQ. It has associated with the time tracking hub and time tracking calculation. Calculations run behind when you enter stuff. And the most important thing is the calculations. But however, time tracking gives SQ has several things which we configure on our roadmap. Once there is configured like time tracking times, it includes your time entry code. What codes needs to be entered? Alright. How they will enter, what would be the process, like the business process configuration. Everything is determined on the functional area time tracking. That's how it works. Alright. Now, when time tracking is done, then another thing is time tracking hub. It is one of the subset SQ of time tracking. What it does, basically there are organizations, they subscribe to this time tracking. However, there are certain population who does not want to use Workday time tracking, but for the source of truth and source of having the data centralized system, they would use Workday time tracking. But the some population use different tool. Let's take an example of your tool Chronos. When the interlink of these tool happens. For example, third-party tool is your Chronos and Workday is your source of truth. You are entering hours in Chronos that is getting integrated with Workday. If time tracking hub is not enabled, it will not do. Time tracking hub is the gateway for integration. It is the gateway for integration from third-party tool to Workday. When I'm tracking to pay, I mean payroll. Payroll is in ADP, then you need this functional area to be enabled. Otherwise, the data will show. Kind of not only payroll. I'm just saying. For example, there are certain scenarios. If I give you a practical scenario, there is a tool known as PagerDuty. If a client is having Workday's, their centralized ERP system, but they don't want the customer service representative to have the access to Workday time tracking. They give a tool that is PagerDuty, but their hours needs to be flown to Workday. They enter the hours in PagerDuty that gets integrated to Workday time tracking through integration. If you see on the first two columns, I see that there is a word known import time blocks. It is like importing the time entries from the third-party system to Workday. Got it? Time tracking up plays that role. It is also one optional part. The companies do offer that. Like when we do a time tracking implementation, we do it phase by phase. You directly do not give the access to entire global population. You go by phase. Like for example, if your population is more than 25,000 or 30,000, or let's take more than 12 or 15,000, and they are actually located at different geographies. My suggestion from the leadership suggestion, what I have seen, that they don't start directly to the entire globe. They do it by phase, right? Everywhere. For example, let's do it for the APSC region, then EMEA region, then other region. Later or whatever it is, like that, and by the time the other tool is also working. That's how the time frame implementation goes into the picture. And also, these two SKs, all the SKs are enabled when we do the implementation from third-party tool. To what? All the integrations are also being mapped with PCH or PICOF, whatever they do. That is also taken into the consideration. Every implementation which is done, it's done through phase by phase and with granular. We are working on this particular items. Alright, this is the base part. Now, we have not started our training yet. We have just gone through, like what is needed to be done and all those things. When we start the implementation, first is the identification of the population. When I talk about now, let's take about your company 1. Your company came into the picture that, and they stated that we want Workday. We are moving out of Chronos. You as a business analyst, you started your conversation, your stakeholder with that. Let's do it. I'm happy. How and when and which population you're targeting. This would be like the base question, correct? Right? First, you have a timeline look set up like, let's have within the 6 months time frame. Let's have a region AP covered. You said fine. Apparel all population, no exclusion. They said yes, everyone. Everyone in the system would be using Workday time tracking. You said that's fantastic. AP, let's start. They give you a time frame like 6 months. Right. You as a business analyst, you are coordinating with your developer. The developer is also in this role. He would have some technical questions with the implement from the implementation standpoint of view, where HR would be there. HR is no technical. But there would be some implementation partner, right? They would be a technique. They would be the one who would be advising a lot of things. The first thing that comes into the picture is once the population is identified. The first thing that comes into the picture is the period schedule. The first thing, start with the period schedule. Period schedule is the first pillar. When we construct a house, we make sure that before putting RCC, we dig deep. That when the RCC is actually added, the ground should be stable. The first pillar is period schedule. I'm just opening that. What is the use of period schedule? Period schedule is basically determining the start or start date and end date of a time frame. It can be a yearly wise. It can be a weekly wise. It can be semi-monthly wise. It can be bi-weekly, semi-monthly. Also, it can be a different sort of all right. You can discover your own period schedule. If you want to make it 3 days also, you can make it. You put a start date and end date, and after new 3 days, you put a start date and end date. It depends on how you want your frequency. Alright? Generally, Asia Pacific works on monthly, which is basically start of the month, end of the month. Right. Connecting to pay time tracking. I'm saying, what about a US? Is always bi-weekly. United States and Canada, they work on bi-weekly. Bi-weekly and weekly also for the depending on the region, depending on the regions. I'm not experienced weekly one, but I have experienced semi-monthly one on EMEA region. Not from the payment standpoint of view, from absence standpoint of view. You can use the absence point of view also when you pardon. No, I'm just saying like from the absence point of view, wherever it is like link of time tracking with absence. You can mention that too. You are leave, but that is a different SQ. We will just a glimpse if it is a good linking or not. But and Canada is majorly on the bi-weekly. Right. Because we are going to implement for US and Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is also bi-weekly or Canada. But you shouldn't be surprised that if your counterpart said, no, we want weekly, you should be having your guards on. I'm ready to configure. Generally B gives you that. But when you do period schedule, create a period. You describe the frequency over here and the usage part over here. The moment you describe the usage part, automatically 1, 2, 3, these 3 tabs comes into the picture. This will automatically drop off. Let me just create uses by default. It will come here, it absence. You have to mention the usage and it will by default come into the picture when I click on the page. When we are asking this question to the business, we need to ask like the usage, we need to ask like with whom it will be integrated. Or no, this question doesn't mean ask. It's a like understood question that. It is more on the technical side, not from the user standpoint, from the stakeholder standpoint of view. Because they don't know. Do you need to include it in absence, payroll or time tracking? They would just say that we want to pay it weekly by weekly. From that standpoint of view, you would be like, you just give a suggestion that do you want the employee to enter time? You know weekly and get paid like within the 2 weeks. That is the first one. Alright. And this is something that is fine. I'm asking about the usage. No, you that the stakeholder don't know if that this period should be used. should be used with absence payroll and time tracking. It is more on the developer side, like if how he wants to make the period should be utilized. No, but do you think that the stakeholder have a knowledge to create? The period should be used to have the usage. No, 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 no. I understand. They do not have the knowledge. But I'm just saying, are we going to use this time tracking to integrate with payroll? That is why we are for our training. No, for our training, we are not integrating with the payroll. No, no, not for our training. Just because in my company, like payroll is also running from the Workday. And now they are implementing time tracking. Will it like if they want to use a single period schedule, they can. They want to have a separate period schedule and then link it. It is also fine. It depends on the situation. Generally, I have seen that they link it on the same period. If you talk about us, they do it in the same period. They would add the usage of payroll as well as time tracking. And after that, the story would start. It hasn't started yet. After that, they have to check the eligibility part. Who is the population? What I have seen. If I am on a developer, then I will create a separate period schedule only for payroll and separate for time tracking. I don't mix it. I don't like to mix it because then it will become very hodgepodge or very hunky-dory. I don't want to like that. Oh, with that? That is the best practice you mean to say. I prefer some things. Sometimes there are consultants who are very good enough to segregate and make sure that efficient enough in order to make sure that single period schedule is be used. But I don't prefer that. It depends on the consultant to consultant. But what is the work, they say? What is the best? Workday says whatever you want to do, you do it. Workday says if you are efficient enough, you make it like that. Workday doesn't have any recommendations on the creating previous schedule. Workday gives recommendation on the part when you do some configuration part on the endpoint. Like for example, eligibility issues. Those things I in my training of time tracking, they never said it that like you cannot do this. You can do this. Got? Alright. Now let's take a period schedule. Let me just create one period schedule. Let me not use your username us, not us. Period. See the moment I clicked. Time tracking automatically. This particular window has come out. Right? Now if I click here, you see two different tabs. Correct? One is linked to payroll period schedule, which means you can link your time tracking to a different period schedule, which is your payroll period schedule. Or you can use it, the similar one. It is not mandatory. If you see, if it would have been mandatory, it would have an asterisk over here. Right? It's not mandatory. You can use the same one also, but you need to you should enable payroll. Payroll. We can use the same. And automatically this has managed. Now the question arises for the stakeholder and the consultant. Who are we going to provide access to the first base of period schedule and what determination we are going to do with the start date and end date? Right? that comes into the picture to the stakeholder. And you are going to ask him like who? For example, your stakeholder came for the US that non-exempt employees would enter time. Non-exempt employees would enter time based out of United States. No contingent worker. This is the simplest one. Which means you decided all the workers who are non-exempt based out of us would enter the time. That's it. After that, another one said that no, but we want to make sure. After that, one another person contradicts that no, we want everyone to be having. You thought that let's then exempt also. Correct. Then, as a consultant, you stated them that let's do one thing. Let's have a whole population coming up together. And they said, huh, eventually everyone needs to be doing. You decided let's make location address country as United States. And they will use biweekly period. Alright? Now as a best practice from Workday and from my recommendation, the period schedule involves the entire population. You do not mix and match on the period schedule level. If anything goes wrong on the period schedule, level time entry would be damaged. None of them would be having a time entry. On period schedule level always include from the highest standpoint of view. You can give and take the access of entering your time entry at different level. It is not the end of the world if you give direct access on the worker eligibility of period schedule. This is the granular mistake a consultant does. And you will see if you right now you're working in your organization, when you will evolve and go to other organizations. You will see there are some stupid calculations which have like 10, 15 period schedules because they did not configure on the base level to enable everything on a company level. You will see time tracking period should do maximum 3 or 5. One is bi-weekly, one is monthly, one is monthly. That I took 2. But you will see sometimes 3 or 5, depending on some of the regions like only this specific population. That happens to 3, 5. But there would be companies who are like having 10 base because of the started and ended issue. Is your screen got freeze or like no, I am freeze now? I am not typing anything. I'm just giving you an example. That's how it is. Understood. In this worker eligibility first. What my understanding is, just correct me if I'm wrong. Worker eligibility is nothing like first. First we just define who all are eligible for the time tracking and then down. And then down the line we will again segregate. Which particular location will fall under this? Different categories or eligibility. Is that correct? That is the next part. Here it is the whole sum level. Everybody is eligible for period schedule for the period schedule, not time tracking for the period schedule. For the period schedule, what we do, we go and click over here. And basically we start typing like all workers USA and P are to Puerto Rico. If I would have been your place, I would add location, address, country. And when I do that, I'll click over here and see the business object if it is worker or not. Because why worker? We are targeting to the worker population. No position. Never add position. Never add anything with the business object position over here because position would be there and it may get inactive in future. Then your period should get disrupted. Location, address, country. It's fine. Then you select there's a base thing. This is I did. That makes now that every worker in United States or Puerto Rico are eligible. This is not the end of the story now. The major part starts now. To understand what is the meaning of what item, I'm just going down. This is in their time tracking. Someone has created, but someone has created. Why there is no end time? This is the thing that I'm going to make you understand is one of the complex thing and lot of my lovely folks gets confused on that. Now I'm just creating a monthly period schedule, adding the dates over here. Let's start from this year. 122240. Ignore error. Error over right now. You understand the concept 2024 because this is what I'm ignoring this because this is done by the payroll consultant, not from us. This piece is owned by the payroll consultant because payroll is enabled. If payroll is enabled, then can we ask them or like we'll ask them to go and do these changes. They will give you the dates. They will give you the dates generally. This whole dates has been decided by the payroll. Your payroll team, payroll thing, it's a payroll payment date. Probably it will be after period and it right mostly depends. Oh no, but in like in India on last day. Alright, I understand. Monthly period started of the period is the first of the month. End of the period is the last of the month. Understood these 2 points? No clear, no issue. No issue why I have added payroll payment date. Sorry, I'm just moving this. Your organization attracts time. People go and enter time in your organization. How they can enter the time is determined. When they can enter, the time is determined by the period schedule. There is a section which is open time, lock time, unlock for adjustment and close time. This 1, 2, 3, 4 section determines the gateway to enter time on the system. When to enter? For this specific month. The worker can start entering time for the month of January 1st till 31st of January. From 1st of January and automatically at the period would be locked, which means from to until 31st of January 2024. The worker will not be able to enter any time on the periods of 1st January till 31st of January 2024. That is the definition of lock time. All the interview questions comes on over there. I also ask a lot of questions on this. Now why we do this? That locking the time. If your time entry is the base for calculating your money, why we do the locking of time the way we do the locking of time? To do the payroll processing. Payroll will get the data and they will process the payment. Right? They have their background calculations based on your like. If you are eligible for double time, overtime, everything. They cannot do dynamic all the time. Like you're entering the towers and it will fetch into the payroll with integration and payroll will do the dynamic calculation. It is not like that. The world does not run like that. Oh, this is one of the issue with this tenant. It gets refreshed very easily. It was during our time. It was disconnecting the video and disconnecting all the time. For example, lock time entry. Let's make it like 1 to 25. What will happen? Open time I have. Let me open them. Let's take you all right now. Open them. You understood correct. Lock time is like the point of time from which, for this specific period, the period is locked. Employee cannot enter. Only the administrator or her partner can enter. Employee herself cannot enter. Administrator and her partner can enter only if we give the security. Oh, that we will cover later part. I'm just giving you a hindsight example. And that comes on the security section. When we do that lock time, now there is a section which is unlock for adjustment. Why it has been introduced? Unlock for adjustment has been introduced because there may be some scenarios. There would be some glamorous employees who would forget to enter the time or who have mistakenly entered the time, and we need corrections. If we mention a date over here, for example, payroll has processed. Payroll has processed and gave us buffer time that till this date everything can be reconciled or corrected. If I give a date over here 01, let's make a 10522026. What will happen? 22 and 6 or 2025, just know you understand, you are not paying attention to the details. I'm sorry, this is December 31st. Lock time. Entry is like basically from 1st of January, 3rd of January nobody is entering time till 5th of January till 5th of January. On 5th of January, 3rd of January, at a given time, they will open it to enter time for the month of December 25. To the month of December 25 to make any changes. Till let's make it. I give 2 days buffer 11, 7, 26. 2 days buffer that. 5th, 6th, 7th, 7th at let's make it 10 am. At 10 am, the tenant will close. Then comes an entry that there would be some more glamorous employees who would forget to enter beyond this. Then what is that? There would be some more than one. Of the things that we would do is that we would be able to do is that we would be able to do that, and then we would be able to do that. What we will do is that we will just close time entry, we'll give some random date or some date, and then it will unlock and then we can enter that. What we do is basically this is the unlock tail adjustment. Here everybody can enter. A partner can enter on behalf of the worker, but beyond close right worker won't enter. During this, unlock for an employee can enter. Also, I said everybody can enter. Everybody can enter. Alright. Generally, you get cases through Jira that I'm not able to enter the time. Whatever it is, but you get the cases after this period 7th after 7th of January. If you get cases after that, here's the question. The question comes into the picture after close time entry. Can any super user can enter time for the period? The simple answer is no, nobody can. Even God cannot enter time. That's the answer that needs to be given time. Entry. But if no, then how to? Then if there is a such urgent issue, like for example, you will see once your time tracking is implemented, like retro dated 6 months data needs to be corrected. Retro dated 6 months data to create corrected. At that point of time, there are two options, and this is a practice that company to company differs. Some company works in a different way, and some different way, and some different. Like what we do generally, we remove this and give a window of 30 minutes and tell the hard partner to correct the time. Write or make the time changes for that period. Once they confirm, then we add it back in the period. The same date. Tell them to submit and we add it back. Their retro submission is done. Else it's the same partner. Historical edits in Chronos retro data, historical whatever 6 months data. Because it is closed. You cannot enter the time for this period, correct, right? Because it is close. Close lock. Lock can be exempted through super users, but close cannot be. The only way is to go and edit the period schedule. Look into that period, remove that. Tell via that ticket that I have opened it for the specific worker, for everyone for few duration. Make the changes right now because it is in Jira. The art partner or whosoever requested would do what the employee would do. That is the only way the interview questions comes under this parameter. Only open time. Lock time unlock for adjustment. Close time entry, and when your discussion with the stakeholder also, you would have to tell them that this Workday gives this functionality. We work in this time frame and these are the things which happens. But now on practical side, generally lock time entering, close time entry or have a buffer of like 1 month or 2 months for example. We do not make strict rules. For example, in your B weekly period, you might see the lock time entry would be having like if the week is ending, then it would have a 2 weeks buffer to lock. After that, lock to unlock would have a 1 week buffer and unlock to close would have like 3 weeks buffer. You may see that because closing a period is a big, but again, this data will be given by the business only, like that would be given by the business only. It would be a discussion, be not by with the business and the payroll folks, but the payroll team would give. And most of the time when I said that you will see a lot of period schedules in time tracking is because of the payroll. The payroll. Payroll says that the close time entry in log time, and we want this buffer, we want that buffer correct. Based on that, we people tend to create a lot of period schedule for different situation. When I said people create different institution, let's take an example. I have a monthly period schedule in my company which is standard for all IPAC. But then India comes into the picture. India says that no, we want to give a buffer of 3 months for lock and close. Then there is no point to make anything. Then I had to the utmost thing is to create a new period schedule and same monthly. That's how things differ. This is the thing, and as a consultant for you, you have to make sure that you work with the kind of payroll team that let's have. Let's have a streamlined system, have a consistency. If we start making a lot of periods, what will happen? The periods needs to be updated every year, correct? Right, there would be a maintenance work. Let us suppose if the payroll team asks to create a 10 or 12 period schedules, and if we say it's not good for the business, what should be? Our first thing is that we shouldn't have a lot of period schedule because it is not good for the health of the system. A lot of yearly maintenance and chances of error would increase. Yep, that would be if we can accommodate similar items at a symbol. Similar period, should you like by week, is like if Canada, Puerto Rico and us are on the same payroll, then have them together. Asia Pacific, like grouping together similar kind of countries, I would say, and that is the one of the optimum way to work on this particular item. That's how it has been over here. Period should. Most of the questions comes on the period should open, lock and unlock an adjustment. What will? Confusing questions comes like, what if I have given this date? What will happen if I crossed my template? This then. Simple thing, open means gate is open. Go for the entire period. Write the entire period. Means from 1st of January to 31 January. Enter whatever you want to do. Enter from this particular date. Log time entry is like the gate is locked. When gate is locked but still super user can enter the time right. How, for example? For example, super user like a partner and admin or enter your time. Then come unlock for adjustment. It's a simple thing that you have to make a mistake, you have to correct it. Go for unlock for adjustments. And last but not believe the close time like it's a final book closure ledger. Book closure is basically close time entry. That's how the period schedule is configured. This is the first base and this is one at most important base. What we studied today. First make the popular entire population eligible from upper side, then segregate them. Who is doing what and who is doing what. The second chapter, which we will learn on our next session, would be the work schedule, and we'll start working on the configuration part before going to the next part, on the A part. Alright, last past week period schedules. One pillar is done. Let's capture the another pillar, which is one of the important pillars, and most of the operations work comes from there. Alright, and it has very importance in the not only in time tracking, also with absence. It is basically known as work schedule. Alright, what determines your working hours? When is your data? When is your day off? When you are having a half day, or when it is your I would say your shift is over everything, your meal time and everything. Like what is company designated meal time also for you? That is what is known as work schedule. And work schedule also plays a very important and vital role with respect to tying up workers' schedule and getting those hours. When I talk about work schedule, there can be n number of work schedule for a worker. But most importantly and predominantly, it is a ground rule that one worker would always have at the moment one work schedule. One-to-one connection, is there not one-to-many? You cannot have more than one work schedule for a worker at a moment. You can have the previous work schedule has to be removed and the new work schedule would get into the picture for the worker. I have one question here because in healthcare I've seen they have a like multiple schedule. That is correct. In work in healthcare and rotating shift, they have a multiple schedule that would define. For example, that is schedule a pattern of working, not the calendar that is attached to it. For example, you can define a shift like 7 to 5, then the next day would be like 2 to 5, or the fourth next day would be around like 1 to 1 to 8. If you call that is shift, it is correct that a person can have multiple shifts, but the person cannot have multiple work schedule calendar. Schedule and shift are different. You made to say calendar, calendar and shift are different. What do you mean by calendar? Can you show me with example? Calendar is basically your working hours and your working shift for an entire week or a month or a year. That is a calendar for you. In that calendar, the subsequent is your timings of working. The timing of working is known as shift. I got. Alright, that is most important thing. And in day-to-day life, most of the work comes from the operation side. If you're in your companies involving time tracking, most of the work would be coming from the operation side on the work schedule. Creating new work schedule. When they say they create a new work schedule, it means you have to create a new work schedule calendar. This is the redundant or what said. This is one of the mundane work that comes from operation side. Whenever there is a new group of population which is joining the company, or when there's an accusation, or when you have a customer support in your organization and they are also tied up to Workday, or even though they are not tied up to Workday, but they are to a third party system and their absence and time tracking are getting integrated in Workday. Then also a lot of times you have to create a work schedule because Workday would analyze that function of the worker if they have a work schedule or not. Even though in absence also. In absence. Why I said work schedule is important. In absence, we have a system. I have not touched the screen. It's reached. In absence, system needs to determine which is your working day and which is your off. And in absence, when we configure a time of plan, we configure in such a way that working day or holiday. If we have put a condition in such a way that the day is a working day, then you can put an absence. If it is not a working day, it's a holiday, then we need to put an absence. Correct? Right. The system needs to identify like that. For that, work schedule is one of the vital and one of the. What I understand, like in work schedules, you can have a multiple shifts. Right. You can have a multiple shifts. Here I'm starting making your work schedule calendar. Create work schedule calendar. When we create a work schedule calendar, we see a lot of items on the first. The naming. There is a very good practice. Every company works in a bizarre way, I would say. Different way of working, and they. As a consultant, you want to make a seamless experience for the worker. That is for first. And for the person who is going to have a reporting over here, alright, always make sure that you create a naming convention which is very readable. Either it is targeting a population, or it is targeting work, or it is targeting region. For example, you have a global company. And let's take an example. You use your 5 regions. For example, you have a California region. You have a mountain region. You have a central region and eastern region. Let's take an example. And there you got a request that, hey, for California region, create a work schedule calendar which would be 777. Some hours per day. 1 week, 1 day off and 7 hours. Like that. What you can do over here, like for example, USCA 77. 0 means there is off day. Kind of. That is one kind of, or use a C. If it is a 40 hour of week, you say CA 40. You can do like that. It depends on a consultant how he wants to frame it for the readability and for the employees. Alright. The operation team. Basically, in some of the organization, this operation team business gives this naming convention. Can you make this calendar kind of? You're correct. The requirement comes from the business team on the making of hours. We want a schedule which is like 7 hours Monday, Tuesday 7 hours, Thursday off. Like that. That comes from the operation. Rest you configure. Alright. In my previous organization, we used to have like a region where it's like EMEA 40. A 40 like that. And standard 40. Let's make this. You want to have a schema summary. You can add a summary over here. Then comes a very important part, which is the calendar rule. What will do? It will open a new screen, and it's basically eligibility calendar. For example, if you're making a group of population, all the United States California workers are eligible for this. Would get aligned to this. If I make it like this, you will say CA, location, address, country. All the workers in the United States are eligible. Now I just put a state. State, the country is USA, right? Automatically there would be a California, right? There would be a United States state. It would come. It's a Workday deliver field. Location address state United States. I have to just select that here. It belongs to worker. And automatically in the selection list, California. What will happen? All the workers given in on that particular region would automatically get assigned. I'll give you a practical example. It is not necessary to create all the time calendar rule, because in your company, when there would be coming up a lot of work schedules, alright, and they keep on changing, you need not to. It is not necessary to create a work schedule calendar for everyone, because you have to segregate every time the population. And why I say it? Now understand, if multiple calendar rule applies to a single person, work schedule calendar rule, they will not be able to enter the time, because one worker is always eligible for one work schedule calendar. Correct. What we do? What generally happens? There is a business process which is used, and it is highly been recommended. That is a signed work schedule. That can be used. But now, we are not running on that. When we will do the business process, that we can do it. Having said that, let's roll back over here. Calendar rule is basically your eligibility, which assigns, which automatically makes your work schedule calendar. When I remove it, and let's remove it, what is calendar group? What do you understand by the word calendar group? Calendar group, different times of calendars. Different. That's correct. But why we want to group it? Why we want to group it? That we can define this wherever this employable sits in that calendar. Sort of. Alright. When we had a previous comment from you, like the will give calendar, right? A lot of calendars. Wherever there is a similarity, we can group it together. For example, you are a global company. You have Asia Pacific. You have, right? Correct. They say create a lot of calendar for different locations. All the time would be very difficult to find out which group, which I calendar together, or the together different, big accommodated different schedule, different kind of grouping together, similar kind of can be considered schedule calendar. Are you getting my point? Calendar group, not eligibility, basically grouping automatically actually reporting, right? Actually look group perfect, creating F creating calendar. A schedule calendar automatically. Hap duplicate ex connect country create whatever country should calendar work list create calendar. Grouping them together is a very good thing, right? On the second part, there is another section which comes into the picture, which is basically the time tracking. What it stays like. It has like 4 to 5 segments. And here is basically, it asks you few questions. What is your day breaker like? One day changes to another day. At what time? The basic thing is 12 am. Alright? There can be scenarios when you can make it 1 am. Also depending on who is working, for example, our shift workers, alright, who are working a shift, B shift, C shift. If you have heard about these shift, not, it's fine, like who are having a morning shift, afternoon shift and day shift, night shift. For the night shift, the day breaker can be changed. Workday doesn't recommend you to make them like custom day breakers. But companies can have like more or most of the EMEA region companies where there is a lot of manufacturing unit. They have these kind of things. They have the custom day breaker. For example, 12 am. Like Sunday today 12 am. Automatically it becomes Monday. Correct. That is a breaker for us. We can have a custom breaker also. But I don't recommend that. It doesn't make a sense. When we say day breaker and my shift is 10 p.m. to then what? And we have made this day breaker as a 12 am. What and when I log in 10 to 14, then what my system will show? System will show nothing. That you have checked in on 10 p.m. on 25th of October, 25th of March, and you checked out at 26th of March. But your shift would be considered if your shift configure is shift would be of 24th of the 5th of March. That's what total on that check. It has nothing to do with hours reported. Hours reported is the reported quantity that you report on the system. Right? It is basically categorizing which date is falling. Now work week start day. It is basically a calendar work week start day, like it starts from Sunday to Saturday or it starts from Monday to Sunday. Tuesday to Monday, like that how the calendar would look like. It's basically on the UI work. Whatever you want to make it up. Then you know all of the companies have like major, like 70-80% of the workers would have Sunday to Saturday, or if in case they make it Monday to Sunday. The first column of the time entry would look like that. Bi-weekly start calculation. Bi-weekly calculation started is basically depends on your period schedule. If you are having a United States period schedule and you have a custom, you have created a new work schedule for the company and for the workers, then you have to match it with your period schedule started. For example, if you have created on the month of March and the period is 1 March to 14th March. Are you understanding? Just understand my concept. If you have a bi-weekly period schedule which is 1 March to 14th March, and you need to create your one work schedule also at that point of time, which is aligned to your workers who are based out of United States. Now you created a work schedule calendar over here. Then what you need to do, you need to map it with your period schedule, which is basically 1st March to 14th March. What you will do, you will map it over here 1st March. It is work week, not a Monday. My million that falls on, the work week starts Sunday. Sunday I did add. That falls on a work week start date. I did add a source of Sunday, Saturday. That's how you have to mark it. It is start date and bi-weekly calculation standard should be the means it should be mapped. It is advisable to be mapped, but it does not make a difference. What about, and you mentioned a schedule calendar also, right? Schedule calendar is this is schedule calendar. Work schedule calendar is this. It is your schedule calendar. Work schedule. Calendar and schedules are two different things. Schedules will define later work schedule calendar. Is this the first part? What it is all about? Calculation. Calculation period is basically from which calculation period defines what are your calculations, the background calculations that you will create. Be it double time, overtime shift, differential, double time. Let's start with double time and overtime. What do you understand by double time is overtime is basically if you're working more than 12 hours a day, then double time 8 hours a day overtime. From which the calculation should refer, from which part? Should it refer on the mid of the week or should it refer to the start of the week? How do it refer? It is Workday, and I also advise that it should always consider month start date. Month started for every month. For example, why I say month started? For example, this month you are eligible for time tracking. What about the next month if you're not? What about that? You are not eligible for time tracking. You have been removed from doing time tracking because you are not. You are now a non-exam employee. You do not need to do time tracking. You are fine. You would get your salary. You are not an hourly employee. Whatever calculations that happened. Whatever calculations that happened previously or in mid of the month. Or if you have been terminated mid of the month, all the calculation should consider the first of the month and tell the date you are eligible. The first of the month is basically a reference point on this particular part. It gets refreshed and most of the period schedule. We have that monthly schedule. Even though it's not a monthly schedule or a bi-weekly schedule. When we do the start of the month, the system has a basic necessity of the reference point to make calculations. And if the calculations has disrupted or if the calculation has any fault, you can refresh it. The period schedule what we have created, right? Now comes the major part, which is the scheduling. When it's not necessary. When I say scheduling, it is basically a work schedule hours. Now when you shifts right means shift. Your working hours. Your working hours. I'll not say shift, but I'll say you're worried. What that is going to be your default working hours? A standard working hours. Standard working hours. Either it is on night or day or whatever that you collaborate as a shift. For me, it would be a working hours. 1 second. Now, when you create a work schedule calendar, it is advisable to have a pattern started. Work schedule calendar. It's a very good interview question that works. Well, calendar has been divided into two parts. One is your patterns and one is your calendar events. Patterns are the static events which would be on a static plate, which would define what kind of working hours you are having. First, we will start into patterns. It is advisable to have a start date. Reference started to from which date your pattern has started. Because work schedule calendars are not effective dated. Have you seen any effective dated over here? Effective date kind of work schedule. Calendar is not effective date. You can make it effective date by adding over here, but that is completely fine. It is not necessary. Now patterns. How many weeks in a year we have on an average? 52. The maximum number of patterns we can make is 52. Patterns is always weekly. And the maximum weekend is 52. And it's a very big interrogation. Nobody's actually noticed that. But if somebody needs to ask like I did ask, check actually the person is actually on top of the basics or not. 50 would be the, I think from all my trainings also, I have mentioned what will I'll do? I'll click on this button. Now automatically everything is off. I'll click on this. Pattern details automatically. New window would come up. Pattern detail. What you need. Single shift meal. Multiple shift meal. There are two kinds of things. There are two kinds of things over here. Single shift meal. If you want to have, you can have a single shift meal. Or you can have multiple. Let's first concentrate on the single shift meal. Single shift meals is like your start time, your end time. In mid if you have a meal time, have it. For example, I make it as 8. Meal let's have 12. 12. And let's close it at 4:30. What will happen? 8 hours a day you are having. 8 hours a day where your meal time has been excluded. That is your, let's take Sunday working hours. If I don't put anything, Monday is off. Let's have a Tuesday again. On Tuesday you will come at 10 a.m. Shift worker and you will have your lunch at 2 p.m. till 2:30. And then you will go home at again. Now Wednesday 1 second. For now on Wednesday, let's take Monday, Tuesday. You work like this. Wednesday, you have an afternoon shift. Now, on Wednesday, you will come at an hour? No worry. Are you able to hear me? I got this issue. That's why I got disconnected. I'm back. Let's directly jump into the patterns. What happened? Hmm? Let's make an afternoon shift over here. Let's quickly have it. Use let's make it off Wednesday. Let's have afternoon shift, no lunch. I have not mentioned lunch hours. My employee can have their own time taking the lunch hour. It will not be a company paid lunch hours. Let's make Thursday also like that 14 till 10 and then Friday off and Saturday have work, Saturday again 10-18. Now you see this. This is how a calendar is created. Pattern calendars created. Whenever you will get a calendar request from ops, you will create like this. I'll click. I have one question there. Actually 24-hour shift is there, right? If we enable it, what will happen? It is a 24-hour rotating shift. Can you show it once? Means if we click, then how it will? It will do nothing. It will just click 24 hours. The time would be removed. Everything would be like he's working on that whole day. When it is UI, manufacturing industries, it should be used. But means in that pattern someone should work, in that the worker is occupied for the whole day, 24 hours. In medical preference, a medical occupation. It happens like, for example, you start today morning and you enter tomorrow morning. Though those who are on opt, the MBBS doctors who are on the floor, they do 12 hours a shift and they do 3-day working, 3 or 4-day working, 4 day of working and rest. Three days are off for them. Sometimes they have this rotating shift where they have to work 24 hours and the next day that would be off for them. It is seen. I have seen personally. Fine though they don't use Workday. They have that punch in, punch out system, but it can be accommodated like that. This pattern states that for a week it would be 10 am to 6, then off, then 2, then 2 off, then 10. This is for week 1. But don't get confused that you have to create for every week. You don't have to. If you have put like this, then it would be going like this for the worker. But when you play with that, like you want to create another pattern for week 1, it would be like this and you want to change. For week 2, you want to make week 2 as 9 am. Whatever, let's make overtime on that day, whatever 15, sometimes less hours, 14, 11. When you click because of this, they are not making as effective date this calendar. Because of this or whatever you say, I don't know why. Because of this, but effective dated you can. Pattern started makes it effective. No, if we give this pattern start date, let us suppose January 1st, it means from January this is applicable for the worker. It means the week 1 pattern will be like that, and if we week 2, we will be this week. Then again it will be rotating. And let us suppose pattern start date is from April, it will be. Start date is like how when the pattern should be applicable. This is like that. This is pattern. Most of the work companies will. You will see having a lot of patterns with contrast to patterns. Now, when we see the work school calendar, you will see another option. This is worker editing option. When I click on this worker editing option, is basically giving a worker a superpower to make changes on your schedules. The first option is change schedule and non-schedule days. If I click over here autonomously, it says that worker has a power to change what is their working day and what is the not. It is not advisable to give the worker their schedule to have the autonomy or the power to change their schedule days, because then they can mess up with the system. That is the first part, and there would be a lot of confusion with among the other workers on when is their working day and when it is. They are not. See all the working system in Workday. I have seen they are not having this, but just for a set sake of knowledge, let's have it. What is the meaning of that? Change the number of scheduled days when we give this to when we give scandal. Change the number of scheduled day when we give this. Then we can have that worker can choose the number of working days, scheduled days. Is basically working this correct? Right. Enable now daily and weekly hour restriction. If I click over here, there are 4 options over here. Minimum hours per day. You can add over here that you have to work like minimum 5 hours a day. Maximum. You can also set a limit that you cannot go beyond that, like some workers. In order to like the workers who want to get overtime and double time or whatsoever, they tend to work extra, you can put up a maximum limit like 16 hours max. If you work beyond that, you are not getting anything. Minimum hours per week can be 3 and based on. For example, you are 40 hours a week. Now it is up to you how you complete it. Oh, you can do it by 4 times 10 hours or in 3 days. Also, you can complete how it is up to you. Maximum number of hours per week. How many hours can a worker can work per week? You can also determine over there, and it is you can set limit on this particular over here. It is on from the administrator standpoint of view how they want to put in a limit on the daily. Daily and weekly hour decision can be set only by worker or can be set by this company. Daily and worker working restriction is from the company side, great, and worker also can do that. No, worker cannot do. The worker cannot do that. No, if they have enabled worker editing options is select, then also that they can do selection of days and selection of schedule and non-schedule days. Worker cannot find. That's what I just know. Selection of times also. If you check over here, uniform start and end time. Uniform start and end time, like it is going to be you have to be on time on 9 and you have to end your time by 5. That is a uniformity that we maintain correct. You cannot start your day at 10 and end it up at 6 and say that or I have done my day. Uniformity, if I check over here the uniformity. But the company gives the flexibility also over here, a flexible start time and flexible end time. Now, if you have seen, there used to be in manufacturing industry or a lot of in industry that flexibility of deal. When you say that flexibility of time is basically just your scheduled task start time at 10 am, but you can come to the office by 10:30 max. There is a buffer of 30 minutes, correct. That is auto result to 10. But we have heard in a previous, like if you come, let them 10:30, then it would be considered as your half day or something. If you maintain that flexibility 30 minutes is configured over here, you can. You can late check in and early check out. That flexibility is configured over here. If I make it over here like 10:30 over here and I have a uniform pattern, then have my worker can come by 10:30. I have a uniform pattern means like I have a scheduled pattern for the workers having 10 to 6, uniform 10 to 6. Then I can make it 10:30 over here and I can also make it like 10 to 6 to 5:30. They can go by 30 also. But having said that, on a contrast over there, that my pattern should be on, a pattern should be having a uniform constant as well as uniformity. On that, if I didn't select uniform start and end time, then also I can give flexible start, and then how if you don't, you can't give. But on a system wise, how would you define on a system wise? Because when I say that your patterns are not uniform, then if your patterns are not uniform, your patterns are like from 2 to 7 to 2 3 giving on the week by week, then it will create chaos. Correct, right now. When now next part is meals. If you're allowing meal, I mean also you have you give the worker the ability to change their meal and start and end time. If I click over here also, you can have restriction over here like what is the minimum working hours and maximum meal duration. This is something that is in California. A lot of things comes in the picture, that California meal penalty. It is not configured over here. It is configured through calculation, the California, when you understand by pound calculations. California meal penalty is not a calculation kind of a thing. It's a kind of a scenario which changes company to company. If you're working from 5 hours, you have to take a break. If you're working 5 hours, then you have to also have a 30 minutes of break. If you have not taken a break, then the company would be penalized for that, for a break, all those situations. You can also create schedule that minimum you have to take 30 minutes break. If not max, you can take 60 minutes break. You can configure over here. This would give a restriction directly to the worker and it will not have in worker waiving their meal penalty or not. This will not give an option to the worker to waive their meal penalty. Here we put it maximum duration like minimum duration 30 and maximum duration 60. It will apply this meals to them. Right? They have if they wanted to come before 30 minutes. It won't allow, right? Yep. This is the 2 portion. Now there is another thing like pattern. There is another item which is basically your scheduler calendar events. Either you will have patterns or you will have calendar events in the system. You cannot have both on a single calendar. That what I have understood till now. Patterns, you describe the timings. But there is kind of like you can create a multiple pattern or whatever you want to do. Scheduled calendar events is also a part of a work schedule calendar, but their fit to limit is not there. You can have multiple on that. 52 work schedule calendar, the patterns that we configure, it is not the limitation. You can have a multiple on this particular on your work schedule calendar. It directly does not get attached. Over here, I have to click. Oh, you have to add a pattern started. It's a mandatory field, but it's I will say check on that. Now there is a new. There's another item which is work schedule calendar. You are not allowed to enter anything directly by clicking over here. The way it is clear created is going to the related action. Go to the calendar, add calendar event. It's, it is most highly used when you are creating holy holiday calendar. We create holiday calendar event. For example, now it is your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday work schedule. Or Monday to Friday. You can create custom validations on this, like for weeks, also for days also. Like for example, you can have a 3-day week. Also for 3 days you will work like this 4-day. You will work on a different calendar event. You can create those kind of modification like a lot of combination on your working days. You can create on this, but here you have to put the started and end date. Started is mandatory and it is not mandatory, but you can also put your end date also. For example, let's take a hypothetical. I don't know how to configure that, but let's take a hypothetical example of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I will work 8 hours, that is 1. Then Wednesday off. Then from that particular day to that particular day, Thursday to next Wednesday, I will work on a different pattern. Like 5 hours a day. Under understanding my point month this week. This Wednesday, I'm working till 8 hours, 10 to 6. Wednesday, my off. Thursday to next Thursday, I will work 9-hour shift. From Thursday to next Thursday. That can be accommodated in a single work or with multiple work schedule calendars. Start it and end it. You have to maintain when there is a all calendar day event. Now all calendar day event is basically your full day event. If you're making it full day event in the sense like 10 to 30, whatever you want. I'm sorry, I'm mixing. All calendar event is your 24 hours is per packed. But when your 24 hours is not packed, you want to have an end date also. Generally what we do, it is for the same date itself. Starting from 3rd of 24th of March, my working day is turn me after 6. 6, wait. Now, in this particular works will calendar for a day, I'm working from 10 to 6 starting from 24th of March. I want to add a meal over here. Like 12 to 1. It's fine, correct. I'm just adding that. One step. Let's do it now. There is a part coming up is recurrence. Recurrence means loop, correct. How you want to repeat it? Is it a one-time event which is only being considered on 34th or 24th of March, or do you want to have a recurrence of that? When we need to do that, right? Mainly we'll do the recurrence, right? Depends. It depends mainly, yes, but there should be a special events also, right? Recurrence. There are different sort of recurrence: a daily recurrence, weekly recurrence, and monthly recurrence. What if you want only once in a month? On that particular once in a month, you can have it like that. Let's start with daily. This repeats. Either we can have every weekday, like Monday 10 to 6 p.m., or we can have every X days, like after repeating of every 2 days, we can have it. Or after every 3rd day, we can have it. We can have this schedule correct. A lot of flexibility you can have. Or they are in pattern. You have to mention the timings correct. See the difference of cat patterns and events. And don't ask me the question which is better. It depends company to company, whatever they want to have it. When we say recurs, every weekday means Monday to Friday, right? Every weekday is Monday to Friday, depending on Monday to Friday, and every X days is basically whatever. Now, you don't want to have that? Go for month. Weekly recurrence. It recurs every week means every 1 week means this week, next week, every week. But what if I want it should work by weekly this week, after 2 weeks this should occur, and also which days of the week also it should occur. You can mention on that like over here. For example, they should occur Monday and then Saturday. That's under. Also it will show for next 2 weeks. Then Monday when I just have the red sun down, next 2 weeks, like this week. After recurs, every 2 weeks, after 2 weeks again it will recur correct. We are making by weekly same like over there. Alright, now if I don't want weekly recurrence, no, because 1 minute, a little bit confusion for me. Recurs every X weeks means for the next 2 weeks or after 2 weeks. It will follow this pattern the Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, every 2 weeks because every 2 weeks means next 2 weeks, right? Next 2 weeks like this week and next week, and then again after 2 weeks it will happen. Oh, now the last part, which is the monthly recurrence. Now you can have a specific month of recurring this. I'm making it April, June, August. You can also have recurrence type either days, which day you want of the month or which week of the month. You can have this particular schedule. You can have that configured for the system correct. Alright, you can have both of them. This is over. Here are we good. There are 3 types of recurrence which you got freeze screen. I have made it freeze right now. The 2 type of frequency. Either you make it daily, weekly, monthly. Also, you have the pattern to choose which of the month and which of the day you want to make it, either which of the day or which of the day of the week. This is now. This is circle part, it is bullet part. You have to choose either of them, not both of them. Alright. Alright, moving ahead now, when you have the recurrence range. This is on a day basis. It would be every day. For a calendar day, it would be 10 to 6, and you can configure for this some recurrence at 10 to 6. You can either monthly, weekly or daily, but till how long you want to make it. You can have a range for that either from you can mention a date like this would occur till 2025. This kind of pattern would work for the workers for 2025. Or if you want to have endless, you leave it like. This will not show any error. It will automatically get created by clicking. Maybe this operations team does only for a year, right? Like for role year, or might be 6 months of they give you. They give you directly the data and they will tell you to do it for a week, for a month, for a year. But generally for the entire the works will kind of has a pattern if you need to calendar even that. Now understand, I stated you in the first year, either the works you will calendar will have pattern or a calendar event. You cannot have both of them. Now we got an error when we are clicking. This works well, calendars has patterns. If you need to add calendar event, remove the schedule patterns before adding the calendar event. It's a very good question for the interview that can both of them accommodate single-handedly. No, you cannot accommodate both of them. I'm cancelling this. Have you got your tenant access? I got. You can give me the sum what you create, the patterns and works to events. Now this is the new part which has come in few of the updates. I have not extensively used it extensively. I have not either used it, but I have heard about it. Flexible band to define core hours and flex hours. What it is? Basically, you can create a category for the worker like flexible working hours, and it has come with the flexible band itself, the flexible working arrangement for the worker. Now the hybrid work culture has come up. I mean, in order to system to accommodate when to at what time the workers can come and what times they can work. This category has been come up evening flakes, morning plays. Core is like you're working for example. Core is your part when you're immensely working. Evening flex is like you can skip it. From what time to what time? From a time duration like for example from 4 you can skip or start time can be late. Or late checking and early checkout. You can mention over here evening flex. And similarly, the flexes depends on the entire flexibility for the workers at. Given that point of time, what time of flexibility you want to give on which days. At what time should come. What's the time they should go out? You have. You can mention those days over here. I've not seen extensively, and if anybody is slow like following it regressively, because generally if I had to 1 second, if I had to make it strict kind of thing, I had made it in calculations. I've worked with calculations where a worker is checking it late, a block would generate late checking and early checkout, and that can actually be seen on the screen of the worker, as well as it can be reportable also on every month's reports. I did configure that. But see, now Workday is going advancing and they want to make it more reportable. You can add it over here. Flexible work band. See, these 3 pillars takes a lot of time in order to make anybody understand these 3 items. The entire thing went on this particular work schedule calendars today within an hour you. Actually, I just wanted to understand the one point when we are creating the rules. I'm giving like non-exempt. For non-exempt, it's coming like time calculation group, like USA time calculation group non-exempt. It's a working delivered field, or that's a previously created field that you used. No, it's I don't think. Miss V, can we just see once which is your calendar? It's USA, Illinois, something USAIM. Hello, Netherlands. Is it in US? I am USA, California, 40 test file units because I have given it's a calendar role or work schedule calendar. No work schedule calendar I created, and in that work schedule calendar is USEN. That's one. I've given USEN 16 to something like that 66M. 2 like 16 I created or something like that. There's nothing in your calendar role. When you created what you added over here, I added location, country, then a group. I have added. What is the issue that you are facing? Issue, I'm facing the non-exam. Non-exam, what can you? Can you? It's no, I'm just wanted to understand there. If you click non-exam, if you go down, scroll down, this uses a time calculation group non-exam. What is this actually? It's a condition rule somebody has created. Rather, if you see it's a work day delivered, then it's exempt. Non-exempt field is this. If you want to have a non-exempt employees to be eligible, then you have to use this field, and you would see it. Field source would be always work day delivered. Whenever you are using any field, it is the utmost duty of a consultant to just click on the related accent, see if it is a workday, delivered manual. That part I miss actually. Now you realize that you see that 1 second now. Oh, today we are going to see first a calendar, how it looks like. If I open this worker, I go to the action. I go to time and leave. Enter my time. If I click over here, then I see a new window popping up. And this new window is basically your timesheet or your time card. What you say, whatever you say, this is your time card. There are several sections in time card. On the right section, you see a summary of some of the hours that you configure regular, our overtime, our flexible time, weekend and holiday hours. In total, whatever we confident that it will be. The right side is known. The terminology that we use for right side is the totals. This part is your entry part. If you see time coming as a 7, 8, 9, 10 over here, we assume that. First, that this worker is an hourly worker which is clock in clock out poker, who records his time based on time in entry and time in out. Time in entry and time out. Okay? It is a well-known definition that if you see on a timesheet, that you see the timings coming up on the timesheet. That gives you a glimpse that the worker is a in and out worker. Alright, in order to make it a him as a in and out worker, we will do a certain thing. That is basically his entry type configuration. How he would enter a time that is called as time entry code. I am just letting you go through what this time entry code time entry sheet looks like. But every day you see there is a date, and on bottom there is hours. There is a date. This hours, there is a day. These hours, you see this is user 1 day leave. Somebody has configured this very badly. Instead of that, it should have shown hours over here, but it is a day. That's why it is not showing any hours over here. Thursday, Friday, whatever you enter time automatically, that would be an hours, would come into the picture the total number of hours entered on a day. You have option to view the timesheet in 3 methods. What is day, week and month? Right now, the month was not been selected, but you can see day every day hours, can you? You can see the visualization with this timesheet as per each day. For example, when a Wednesday is 27th of March, you can see the visualization. If you go next day, you can see the visualization. It does not. It is not that pleasant, but depends on user to user how they want. If I make it week, you can see an entire week picture. Similarly, there is one thing that is known as month that we need to configure for an entire month overview. Now when you go to, this is the first button and this is second button. The second button gives you a glimpse of what are the things you can have for a worker. There are several tasks. First is your manage absence. If I click on manage absence, it will directly take you to your absence calendar. How this manage access comes here? Is it by default or do we need to do some configuration? Then we can do a configuration on the time entry template. These are the configurable things. My team's overtime request. Since there is a manager, she can see the overtime request also. Overtime request. What time request is basically advanced overtime. Intimation to a manager that I am going to work and many work as an overtime. As an advanced proposal. I'm again going to the time entry sheet. Again the next section. What I'm going to request absence. You can request absence from here, and that would also go directly to a new pop-up screen. Would come request absence. You can use your timesheet for that also, and that you need to configure. This is not auto-configured. Review time. Review time by way. Whatever entry you have done, you can review that entry. And since she is a manager, she can review the time for everyone and review time by week. There are several actions. These actions can be configured through a process which is known as time entry template. This can be whatever that task, components under the ha. You're correct, you can configure it correct. Now let's start with entry type. If anyone trying to enter the time, how they are entering the time. In the total systems, there is only two ways of entering time. Either you directly put your hours, that total number of hours you have entered in the workday. For example, you have worked 8 hours a day. You directly put 8 hours. It does not define that at what time you came in and what time you went out. That entry type is known as hours only. And there is a second entry type which is known as clock in, clock out. Clock in, clock on defines that. What is your intake time? What is your exit time? In order to create that, this is a task which is known as create time entry code. I will use this time for example, And creating this time it record is for us a Canada as a California regular hours. There are several units, common units, which I can define days, hours, month. Or there are other units also which I can also add, like a car bag, bot box, car case, a lot of things which you can add kilogram, kilometers. Why this has been introduced is basically depending on population to population, what sort of entries they want to meet it. Make it on your timesheet. For example, if there is a business travel, you can put it a entry code a business day with the unit 1 day. You can have it as days. If there is a salesperson and he is traveling every month to one location to another location. Let's take an example of an account manager. They travel every day to one area, to every area, and it has been stated that the amount of kilometers you are traveling, it would be multiplied by a certain number, and that amount you would be getting back as a reimbursement. It's a scenario. In order to do that, I can put it like travel, kilometers as my entry code, and I put it as kilometer. And that can be stored in my Workday, and every month I will get a reimbursement. There are such kind of things. I cannot go beyond like what are the scenario we can make it, but the common scenario that I can see, let's take an example of ours. Now, as I stated you earlier, there are. First is when we go through a time entry code, the business would like or automatically. Whenever you are talking to the business, you would definitely ask like, how would you want the population to enter the time correct? If you ask that they would be like, you have to define that. There are two methods, either you put your entire hours or you put your entry time and exit time. In order to do that, you select, let's take an example, hours only. The population state that no, these are all salaried employees. They are not hourly based. Let's make it hours only. We don't want to track their in time and out time. You said, and now display it California regular hours. How it will look on the population is basically when they will click on the micro edit. Let's take an example. I am duplicating this. If I go here, I go to my timesheet now when I click over any day. See, I'm clicking and it is not giving me any value. This would come as an issue for you also. Like what is happening, you're clicking and you're not getting the micro edits. At that point of time, what you need to do? Go to open another tab and see what is the issue. Basically, the first thing would be either the worker has ran out of periods. If the periods are not updated, then you would not be able to enter time. View this task. View worker, DAM eligibility. What's your work name? I have, like my habit is with Mac and here my desktop is Windows. I'm typing Alt-C rather instead of Control-C. Then it's really big. Oh, you cannot see your own visibility. Let's make another work. You cannot see your own. You can see your own eligible. No, because you are the one who is doing the Kevin John. Let's take this person, Kevin John. This is my always good character who is based out of Bangalore. Wow, let me click on any of the day. Oh, it is able to enter. He is able to enter. Now when I see there are a lot of entry codes for him. Now let's see, let us make a eligible time entry code just for him that he can enter time. What I will do. Basically, I will go and type view worker time. I'm sorry. When I click over here, it gives the entire history, entire thing about the work. Now, for example, it will give you past dated, future dated, and also the period ended for the worker. What would be the time related major component for the worker? For it, and it's a very big tool for a time tracking consultant. Whenever there is a break fix, I can see he is eligible for one work schedule calendar time and he is eligible to global exception hourly. This time code group, let me make his regular hours as be regular hours. Bangalore regular hours now set the priority. What does this priority means? Now let me show you. We'll give you a whenever you are putting any time entry code. When you click over here, you see a order which is there all the time entry codes are being shown. The priority is set over here for everyone. If everyone is set as 0, then what would happen? It will go through an alphabetical order, whatever entry codes. You have mentioned priorities, basically the alignment of your entry codes. Are you getting my point? If priority is 0, then it will be this time. Let me correct you 1 second. If a worker can be eligible for multiple entry code, for example, project day work regular hours, correct, standby on call, correct, right? If you have created for creating every entry code, you have to use the same entry method, correct. If you have configured everything as 0, 0 in the sense the priority, in order to show it on the display of the calendar, then automatically system would consider through alphabetical order. Understood a simple thing. Basically, let me make it one. What is happening? Again, I'll have to be regular hours, hours be regular, set priority as 1. Now it comes on the increment of hours, how the hours would be incremented. How would you like to enter the hours? Like you can enter with increment of 0.01 like 501, or you enter at the increments of 0.05 like 4.05, 4.5 like that, or 0.1 to 0.1, 4.2, 4.3 the decimal number you want to put in terms of hours. And if you don't want to choose, because we can let it be like this, and then what will be the default there? Automatically, whatever 6-digit decimal would also go. If it is not mentioned, a stress and then leave it. Default would be 8. Then comes the group, which this population is belonging to which group. In my previous, when I saw his time entry code, I just added him into this actually and will go by this. But for the sake of making this, I'm just making it like I just want to understand the time. Code groups. That thing will sell. Nothing is going to be. Now when I clicked automatically, your hours has been created. Now when I go over here and I go click refresh and I click here on a day, I see a lot of work hours coming up. I will click on the entry code. Do I see by regular? I see by regular, I click automatically. Default hours has come 8 because I configured. Their default entry hours is 8, quantity 8 right default. I want to make it 4.5678. Let's see if it's enter quantity not more than 2-digit decimal. It is allowing you 2-digit 4.67. If I add, it goes again correct. You can click and automatically a block would generate a regular. All the blocks which are basically regular hours, which are basically only hours, not in and out. It goes on the top of the timesheet. Now let's go back to our entry code and let's modify this. Now let's make it first increment of 0.25 now. After that, we'll go to groups. What is groups? Time code groups. If time code groups are basically similar time entry codes or a group of time entry codes which is aligned to a population, a specific population. For example, you are a software engineer, you are also required to work on call. You are also required to work standby also. There are several workers in your organization who are eligible for that. The eligibility is very simple. A job profile of software engineer, correct. Based out of Bangalore, correct. These workers would be using regular hours, on-call hours and on-call standby hours. When we create time entry code, we need to assign it to a group or to a eligibility criteria like who would be entering these kind of hours. There comes the picture, timed code group. The moment I click on the time for groups, either I can add an active group or create a time code, what it asks. Which time entry codes it needs to have. If you make it black, it's fine, but what is the worker eligibility? Which country and period type? Period type is not necessary. It is basically creating eligibility. You can mention your eligibility on the country for here also and here also, work eligible. What it will do? It will align the similar groups together. When I click added over here, this group over here. I clicked and I went there and if I click over here, this group work eligibility. Let's see compensation plan effective if it is hourly exception time reporter projection. They have created time reporter project with the exception is no job classification is salary time classification. If I click on every of those things, every related action of the things, I will see all the business object is directly pointing out to the worker condition rule and job classification. Hence, you can create your own time code group with a specific eligibility. It is not necessary that you need to have multiple time entry code to have a time code group. A single time entry code can also be used can also accommodate. On a time code group, if I see the time entry code, there are two by regular and exception hours. Now there are two time entry codes. This worker is eligible. If I go and see over there, I click on the click over here. I will see exception hours and be regular hours. Similarly, this worker can be eligible if I select any. If I select any other time entry code for this worker, he is eligible. See a worker there? I have not stated. The worker cannot be eligible for a multiple time code groups. A worker can be eligible. It is not necessary that the worker is eligible for one-time entry code groups. This if he is able to see a lot of entry codes. And when you go to view worker time eligibility, you saw that a worker is eligible for 1, 2, 3 time code groups, and those time codes groups can have n number of time entry code. Those n number of time entry codes can be accommodated to the worker. Now, if I go over here and click by regular now and I make 467, it gives me an error. You can use 0.5 hours now. Let's make it 4.5 to 0, that is fine. Now, let's make something different. Another time entry code, here only be regular hours. When this exception hours time entry code will come into this timesheet and he will enter the exception hours time. We be regular. In that same day, if they have the multiple shift, they can use. There is no exception on that. Yes, write on regular in hours only. There is no issue on that. Again, create a time entry code. I am creating be in out. Hours would be again. The hours entry method would be in and out, display number below in out. I am making the priority 2. Now I see when we check on the box hours, only automatically hours unit entry option comes into the picture and in and out entry options go out. Correct, when I click in and out, you can have only one. You cannot have both of them. It can be interview question that has it be allowed to have two entry methods. Then the new response would be no. Now rounding option. Now what is rounding in this particular I? I stated you flex rounding. I understand this one. What do you understand my 5 minutes breaker marker? 5 minutes marker. Like they have a login time of 2 to means like 2 to 10. Then if they log in also like 2, 5, then it will go as a 2 correct. If they log in as a 2/6, then it won't. It will show the 2/6 only. 1 second. Do you like correct example? For example, this worker has come like a 5-minute marker is like 7 am, and if the worker has logged in 7:03, then what would be the value? 7 or 7:05? I think it should be. It will round right. 5-minute marker, 5-minute market. 2-minute breakpoint. It has stated correct. That's what I understand. What is that 2-minute point? When I stated that I allowed time is 5 and I came at 7:03, allowed time is 7. If I came 7:03, what it would consider? 7 or 5 or 7? It would consider 7 or 5 because 2-minute marker. It's crossed the 2-minute marker. Similarly, 7 minutes marker. Let's make it a 7-minute marker and see how it is looking at. This is 50 minutes marker. 7 minute. This 7 minutes breakpoint, same reception, global reception. Now I'm using the same group that it can show over there. If I click on the same day and I check by in and out. Now I came at 7:08 and went out at 15. Now click. How it would behave? What will happen? Automatically a block would generate with the time respect. From 7 to 3 p.m. a time block is generated. Now you would ask me a question that how come both of you ignore the mail penalty one? It is not necessary for you to understand right now. How come two of the time code like buy regular and buy in and out are on the same day? It can be a question. Correct it is. It can be added because one is a different entry type and one is a different entry type. They are not overlapping with each other. If I click here with any other time entry code, the worker is eligible. Where there is an overlap. For example, are there any other be in and out, regular exception hours, regular hours I worked at, for example, the work time is, let's make it 7 am to 10 am. Automatically 1 second. Now let's see how it is looking. 3 hours. See, the time overlaps is the existing one because they are the same entry code and they are overlapping with each other. You cannot have the same thing, the entry code, which would be overlapping with each other, same type of entry code. When I click on this and we were discussing that breakpoint, let's go to view details. End time is 7:03 and 3 p.m. This is the reported one. Reported means what the worker has reported or what the worker has entered. There is another tab which is basically a very good point to understand, which is basically calculated. What system calculates out of it. I click what it has calculated in time at 7:15, out time as 3 p.m. and that's how. The time entry code had a 15 minutes baker and the worker has crossed the 7-minute marker. The worker entered at 7:08 rather than 7 or 7.5 or something. If I make it like 7 or 7, then also it will show that. Right? If I click see now, see from your eyes what it is showing. Then it would show view details. I will go view details, reported hours, 8 hours, calculated quantity. It would show 7. Rather than showing 7 or 15, will show 7am based on the entry code of 15 minutes marker. 7 minute till 7 minutes. It would be on the right time. After that it would go to the 15 minutes marker. Understood, got it. Question. Any questions? No, this entry method. Whenever we do this time entry code, entry method is always to either hours or in out. Only right there is only 2 methods. You don't have any other methods. You don't give an option of any other method. Can you think of any other method, like on your lifespan? Have you seen any other method? No, have you seen which one was that? No, Noah, then only 2 methods correct. 2 methods are there. Now, there are other things that I did not disclose as of now, but there is a calculation tag. What is a calculation tag? It is basically a transporter, or you would say a carrier of your hours. You label those hours to a particular tag. If any hours which are entered through by-in and out is labeled as, let's make it by regular. Let's make it like that. Be regular is your tag where all the hours would be stored. Or you can say state it as a storage box calculation tag. If anybody asks you what is the calculation tag, tell that it is basically a carrier which interacts with the time entry code. It stores the hours and it has been utilized on different sectors of time entry. What are the sectors? We will go through it. When we have this calculation tags coming into the picture, primarily on calculations, time calculations, when we have to determine overtime, double time, any of the things, the default calculation tag, which is basically it starts its journey from an entry code. It has a relation with the entry code. It's basically a transporter and it's a carrier of the hours. It stores the hours and it has been used at different sectors of time. Entries. Now group is there. Now there is another tab which is basically advanced. There are certain things that I want to make you understand. If I click allow at attachment and I click, what we will see on the time block is basically when we are entering our words, we will get an attachment option. In order to provide any detailed attachment document or any proof, you can add an attachment over here. For example, you worked overtime and you want the manager wants proof. You can attach a document attachment. The second option is, I'm just editing it. The second option is worked at. And now the question would come, what is a work? That when you create an entry option and now you see there are certain fields which we did not entertain. These fields are basically work tags. You are able to see this field because it is configured on a default label on the time entry template. But it's a very technical thing. But again, these things are configured on the time entry template. Now I'll show you how. What is the use of this? It has a very significant use in order to have like a lot of scenarios and number of scenarios can be made. For example, a worker is billing hours, a worker is billing his hours. Now in organization there are cost centers, correct. From which call center the hour should be, the amount should be directed. It can be different. It can be determined by adding the cost center over here. For example, now let's create one work tag. Let's attach one work tag, basically add cost center. If you see, there are. Work tags are limited. You can create custom work tags also when you have a security with custom domain cost center. I selected entry option default value. Let's make a cost center 100. If there is any cost, center 100, office of CO, let's make it. And I clicked. Now let's go to the time entry template. Close this. Delete this first, delete this. What do you see over here? Automatically our center came into the picture because what we created the tag as well as map the tag with a specific cost center. If I don't make it and make it like either hidden, hidden is basically only our admin can enter required. If I make it required, what will happen? I remove it, I refresh it. You cannot save that, right? If it is hidden, you cannot see it. If it is required, then you have to add a value. That's not nice. You will see it when it is required if I select over here be in and out and I put hours 10, 15 automatically. You see a stress value over here. You cannot ignore it. You have to add a value. Which cost center it is coming up. But I don't know why we are putting here, because whenever we are getting this person import, we are putting this cost center as because this employee will sign comes from any one of the cost center. Right? Think you're thinking like no or not on a narrow level, fine. Think from a broader perspective. For example, you work cross-functional. You have a very big organization. You are a HRIS analyst. Currently, you are billing for cost. Cost center of your is analyst tomorrow. You've been involved in some fintech project or some transition project with a different department. Your billing should come from that department. Correct. Don't you think that if we add that cost center over there, it should make a difference while reporting correct? Right? There can be a number of scenarios. For example, project work if you are in a service-based company and they're using Workday. Currently you are in FinTech, Fin Workday module Fin. Tomorrow you are on the integration side. All the budget should be used from the integration side. Correct, the cost center makes a difference. Also, there is not cost center project. You can add your projects also over there. When we have project time entry, a lot of scenarios can be built. Business unit also. Always think from a broader perspective. It's a very good question. I really liked it. But always we should have a holistic perspective. There can be a number of scenarios. In that case, when they apply and when they submit the timesheet to whom it will go further. You'll go to the manager, only the manager of his. Listen, brother, it depends on how you configure a business process. And now I'll ask you how you want your process to be defined. We haven't reached to the business process. Yes, but it depends on the business process, how you want to make this submission business process. For this, how you want it to be like. If, for example, the total time entry for the week is more than 40, it should go to the partner for the review and other stuff. Yes, alright. Time code groups in time. Now, for example, this time entry code is now no longer required. What you can do? You can inactive the time entry code and also remove it from the groups. I do this first, remove the groups and inactive the time entry code that it is not no longer visible. It is not tied up to the time code group also. In order to have a clean system, also that is more efficient for this one, no. Override rates. If I click on the override rates, if I click on override rates, it's basically defining the rates, currency rates of the entries. Consider it like how, what the billing you want to put in what currency. It is majorly used in the finance department. Workday finance, not in our Workday time entry world, because I haven't never seen anything on that. You want to override a rate. For example, you're a user workers, but your hours would be built in euro. You have to choose euro over on every hour that you put on your be in and out. That's how it has been categorized today. What we did is basically, now we will use this worker as your reference. Kevin John is a reference. You will use this worker for your entire testing. What you can do is basically create two entry codes. One is in and out and one is hours only. Create both of them with increment decrement based on, let's make a 7-minute marker for in and out and hours only. Increment of 2.5. Use click on this entry and see what it does. Restrict future time entry. And what it does on your calculations. Check on that show group. Use the same group that we used previously. Global exception hourly. Also, my ask would be from you, when we come on Friday would go, I would want you to go through this particular window, view worker time eligibility for Kevin John. Explore every tab, and on Friday, I need you to ask me questions from every tab. What do you understand and what you don't understand? Sure, alright. 3 tab. Your task would be going through view worker time eligibility. What do you understand from this? And then creating 2 codes. And if possible, do one thing. Use the same method of this, the work schedule calendar he has. Create your own work schedule calendar. Create your own work schedule calendar. Add this calendar rule in your work schedule and then try to hear which calendar do I need to add. Open John's and use this. You use your John's calendar and then try to enter time. Fine, this is your homework and I'll see you on Friday then. Alright, thanks. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.